it's mind-boggling with that influence that Bill Gates would look at the lockdowns and the mandates and think that this worked out so well, he now wants to double down on it.
It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. The lesson I took from this pandemic is we can never do this again. We can never again delegate so much authority to close down society, to mass society, to forcibly vaccinate society, to totally unaccountable, and even if they are theoretically accountable, they don't behave as if they're accountable, elite policymakers, epidemiologists, health officials, and then people like Bill Gates who just have a lot of money. They don't have any actual formal role in the health process, but just by virtue of having bought their way into it. And you know, the kinds of people who clearly fetishize the level of authoritarian control that, for instance, a country like China has to pursue a zero COVID strategy forever, no matter how badly the people suffer.
Yeah, look, I'm very sympathetic and completely agree that Bill Gates' influence in this sector is not based on merit and is unproductive and seems like, in this context, the clip you showed, a weird money grab to sell his book, which I feel like that is not something that he needs to do. To get more book royalties as one of the richest men on the planet. But I am a little concerned that some of the mistakes that have been made in the context of this pandemic, which I roundly agree with are a problem, are a reason not to try to make the system better for the next time. I think a world where we avoided some of the supply chain issues when it came to getting protective gear, when it came to getting masks. A lot of the mask confusion and the misrepresentations about the efficacy of masks was about them wanting to save, PPE for nurses and doctors. That is obviously wrong, and they should not have done that. But a plan that starts to say, we can make these kinds of materials at home. We have stockpiles. We have the kind of ventilator machines and the intubation machines. We have staff up doctors and have more hospital beds. The idea that we would be more ready next time for a pandemic that we should all remember has killed coming up on 1 million Americans, I don't think is a bad thing. And I would just push back a little against the idea that any plan to improve upon the process, just because it is being overseen by the government or in relationship to the government because of its ability to manage that kind of broad scale action, is necessarily bad.
Well, I don't think, we're not talking about avoiding any plan. It's just his plan. His plan is very specific. He says he wants to use the blunt tools that we use during this pandemic, which includes social distancing and quarantines and rapidly deploying vaccines and saying that, oh, yes, they're fine, they're adequately tested. You can't speed up long-term testing. That's just not possible. The whole point of long-term is you need to know, you need time, and you can't speed that up. So what he is saying in this book, apparently, I have not read his book, but just reading his blog post, watching his video, he is talking about using the same tactics that China is using, that China has been using, essentially. And there are a lot of people who agree with Bill Gates. And I don't know how you feel about it, Briahna, but a lot of people feel like, had we just done what China did right from the beginning, had we gone full on with lockdowns, chaining people into their homes, saying you cannot come out, and if you do come out, you have to be wearing a bubble suit. And if you're sick, you get taken away to a facility where all sick people can be together, like in an actual quarantine facility. Some people believe, had we done that, we could have stopped this pandemic. It seems like Bill Gates maybe believes that. The problem is that, again, in my lifetime alone, it's been the ones that I've just rattled off the top of my head: bird flu, swine flu, SARS-1, Ebola. That's just in my lifetime alone. I couldn't imagine doing this 5 times over as it is already by 40 years old.
But the scale of those were dramatically different than the scale of COVID. The number of deaths that have occurred under COVID is significantly different, right? And so I'm not saying that the same response would be necessary to meet those other crises. Those didn't even really result in crises. How many people were affected by swine flu? I felt like that was more of a media creation than this, which has resulted in 1 million deaths, and that number has only petered off because of this vaccine. And I very much hear some of the concerns about the vaccine effects, the new study that came out that validated people's concerns over it creating these heart problems. I full disclosure, scheduled a cardiologist appointment a couple of weeks ago because I was feeling some concerns about post-vaccine effects. But I also have to think about, and I'm looking forward to more studies coming out about what the trade-offs are. The trade-offs are between how many deaths might have occurred had the vaccine not come out. And I think I certainly encourage people to be thinking about how to mediate those effects. If we can be sent bubble suits and groceries at home so that I can voluntarily stay home and I have a check so that if I can't go into my job, I can sustain my mortgage and rent and things, I wouldn't mind that, because to me that is giving people a carrot as opposed to a stick.